under the threat of anti-Semitic mob violence and a highly politicised anti-Israel campaign. Let me be clear, we must never allow the threat of mob violence to dictate policy. The West Midlands Police cited concerns about the Tel Aviv fans based on a previous game in Amsterdam. But the Dutch police have now shown that is completely false. There was no mob of 500 fans targeting the Muslim community in Amsterdam. In fact, many Maccabi fans were themselves attacked. Nobody was thrown in a river apart from one Maccabi fan. The Maccabi fans were not skilled and organised fighters. It was just made up. So, what will the government do to hold the West Midlands Police to account for providing this false information? And unless they have a good explanation, the Chief Constable should resign. Disturbingly, 2 members of the Safety Advisory Group, Wazim Zafar and Mumtaz Hussain, both previously expressed vehement anti-Israel views, so they were not impartial. And we have seen the Palestine Solidarity Campaign in Birmingham trying to hunt down Maccabi players before the game. That is despicable. And when my honourable friend, the member for West Sussex, went to the game, he was abused and called a dog by pro-Palestine protesters, thereby revealing their true colours. And now we have discovered, through a written answer to my honourable friend, the member for Droitwich and Evesham, that the Home Office was made aware of the possibility of the ban as early as October the 2nd, a full 2 weeks before the decision was taken. So why did the Home Office then do nothing to ensure the Maccabi fans could be properly protected? Does the government really think it is acceptable that the threat of anti-Semitic mob violence can dictate policy? Because I think that is morally wrong and should never be allowed to happen in this country.
Can I thank the Shadow Home Secretary? I agree with him that we shouldn't allow the threat of mob violence to stop matches going ahead. I agree with him entirely on that front. I think, with respect, I think he is jumping the gun a bit on some of the phrases that he has made, saying it was just made up. We're not clear on that at this point, and I wouldn't want this House to take what was in the newspaper yesterday and jump to conclusions. That's not to say we don't want to get to the bottom of what happened, and I can reassure honourable members of that. Anti-Semitism has absolutely no place in our society, and we are taking a strong lead in tackling it in all its forms. The Prime Minister made his view about the decision on this match very clear, as did the Secretary of State for the Department of Culture, Media and Sport when she came to this place to speak of it in previous weeks. We have a duty to find the right balance between operational independence and making sure all of our communities are protected in exactly the way that we need them to be. And we know, and lots of honourable members here will know, of the work of lots of Jewish organisations, in particular the Community Security Trust, who help us in that task. And we will not shy away from that. And indeed, we will not shy away from what we need to do if there are changes to the SAG process, which, as I say, were set up following Hillsborough for a different purpose, and we find ourselves in a different world with a different set of situations, then we will make the changes that we need to make. And as I said, I've written to the Chief in the West Mids to ask some questions of him. We've asked the Inspector to do a review. And I should say the Home Secretary is right. We've already, Shadow Home Secretary is right. We've already mentioned that it's only a matter of time, he says. I think not, but there we are. It's best wishes to my neighbour in Croydon always. But on the 2nd of October, this was the point at which the Home Office asked the officials in the United Kingdom Policing Unit for the update, and we were told that there were a range of different options being considered, and that was certainly true, and I wouldn't shy away from that. Now it's important that we all, if there are lessons to be learnt, make sure we learn them.
Sure, why?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At high-risk football matches, including several local derbies, away fans have only been given tickets once they're on the coaches, and those buses have been taken in by a police escort, removing any fan clashes. Would the Minister agree that questions should be asked on why this tried and tested method was not used?
Can I thank my honourable friend for that question? And of course there were lots of considerations that the SAG committee was looking at in terms of what the options were. Should it be a closed match, for example, with no fans, which sometimes happens, and should it be one that didn't go ahead at all? Should it be one, as she says, where the tickets could indeed have been limited in number? There were many options that were being weighed up. And of course it's not just the policing advice that a SAG will look at when it makes its recommendation. It will also look at other factors, and that's why we want to get to the heart of how the SAG process is working, what kinds of decisions are being made, and how that operates. I should also just tell the House that the match in itself, although there was concern that there would be problems in terms of significant protests, there were significant different groups coming to the match. In fact, the concerns that we had weren't realised, which was a good thing. But I will certainly take the point that she raises.
Max Wilkinson, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is alarming that the decision made by West Midlands Police was based on intelligence, parts of which the Netherlands National Police Force has stated are not true, according to reports in the national press this weekend. The public should be able to trust the authorities to base decisions on credible, well-sourced and proportionate intelligence. Will the Minister set out where this intelligence came from, if not the Dutch police? And if she can't, is that one of the questions she's asking West Midlands Police? Who was ultimately responsible for sourcing that intelligence? What investigations has the Home Office asked for to ensure that any circulation of misinformation and the use of that misinformation that was ultimately used by police was not prompted by anti-Semitic sentiment? West Midlands Police have continued to defend their decision and to say that the threat was related to a specific subgroup, not the wider fan base. Will the Home Secretary ensure that senior West Midlands police officers come back to Parliament to appear before the Home Affairs Select Committee to defend their decision and to explain why a total ban on all supporters was justified? And finally, anti-Semitic incidents remain at record highs. What steps is the government taking to reassure the Jewish community of their safety and to tackle the root causes of anti-Semitism? This government promised a community cohesion strategy last year following the Southport attacks. Part of that must focus on anti-Jewish racism. So when will the Minister commit to publishing it?
Can I thank him for his questions? I mean, I can't give him the answers that he wants in terms of the intelligence at this point, and in terms of the root of them and the truth of them. We are responding simply to the information that we got yesterday, and we have asked the appropriate questions to get to the bottom of that. He's right to say that, of course, the Home Affairs Select Committee has a strong role, I think, in this space and can be quite helpful in helping us to unpick some of these challenges. He asked about the support and the signals, indeed, that we are sending and that we intend to send as a government to our Jewish communities to reassure them that we take their safety incredibly seriously. And I can reassure him that, of course, I've met with the Jewish community leaders, with the Community Security Trust, as has the Home Secretary, and we are making available more funding as a response of the Manchester attack in terms of our Jewish synagogues and other buildings, and that is available for them. We've also commissioned a review, an independent review of our public order legislation and our hate crime legislation, and Lord MacDonald of Riverglaven QC, who is a former Director of Public Prosecutions, who will be well known to this House, has been appointed to do that review, and it will examine whether existing legislation, this is in the wider parameters of public order and protest, is effective and proportionate, whether it adequately protects communities from intimidation and hate, and whether it strikes a fair and sustainable balance between the freedom of expression and peaceful protest and the need to prevent disorder and keep our communities safe. He also referred to the wider review that is being undertaken, not in my department, but we are working with them, and that will be published as soon as it's ready.
Johnny Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the chair of the APPG Against Anti-Semitism, I know that with British Jewish communities facing an unprecedented rise in anti-Semitic attacks and hatred of Jews being spread with impunity online, many Jews are fearful that the events in Birmingham are just the first step in a step towards excluding them from British public life, and there can be no doubt that there are many people in this country who'd be only too happy for that to happen. So is the Minister able to take this opportunity opportunity to make it clear to Israelis coming to the UK to take part in our cultural, sporting and academic activities that they will be treated just as we treat any other visitor coming from any other friendly country.
I absolutely can give her, my honourable friend, that assurance. She is absolutely right, and I thank her for the work she's doing as the chair of the all-party group on anti-Semitism. I have been involved with that group and Danny Stone for many years, and they do a fantastic job, and I would recommend to all members of Parliament to do their training session on anti-Semitism. It is incredibly insightful and really worth investing the time. And of course, she's absolutely right. If Israelis want to come here, they are very welcome, and of course there should be no question of that whatsoever. And I think hopefully through the reviews that we are undertaking in terms of public order, through the work that we're doing to put money in terms of tackling anti-Semitism and protecting our Jewish friends in synagogues and other places, we'll be sending the right message. But of course there will always be extra work to do, because anti-Semitism is a rising issue and we all need to work to tackle it.
Chair of the Order First Committee, Dame Curran Bradley.
Mr. Speaker, could the Minister provide any information about work that was done by the Home Office from the point that the Home Office found out that the away fans may be banned to the decision being taken, or was that work work that could be done to enable the match to go ahead with the away fans there, or was that work only done after the decision had been taken?
Can I thank her for her question? There was a series of different interactions and communications between the different groups in that period of time, as you would expect. With these, we have to balance this operational independence question. It is not for the Home Secretary to be marching in and demanding that the police say a certain thing or act a certain way. We need to get that right. So there was communications, and I'm sure we could help with outlining those between the period of the 2nd of October, when the Home Office first asked the question to the United Kingdom Football Policing Unit, and the 16th of October when the decision was made. Can I also just be clear that the department found out about the decision when it broke on the news. We were not told in advance, so there was no question of that.
Graham Stringer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Our police forces in this country have dealt with violent fans from other countries for a long time. I don't expect my honourable friend to be familiar with the bad blue boys of Dynamo Zagreb, who are probably the worst fans in Europe, responsible for deaths and imprisonments, or the ultras of Roma, Inter Milan or Lazio. But they've been dealt with. So the only conclusion that I can draw from the information before us, that the West Midlands Police and the local authorities in Birmingham, following fictions about the fans of Maccabi Tel Aviv, created a no-go zone for Jews in one of our major cities, and isn't she, like me, ashamed of that?
My honourable friend, and I thank him for the work that he did supporting colleagues after the Manchester, and his constituents indeed, after the Manchester attack. He's right to point to the 1980s, where we had a completely different era of huge violence in football, and we are very glad that that has in the main subsided. He says that there should be no no-go areas for Jews. Of course, that is absolutely right, and I completely agree with him.
Sir Andrew Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister knows the Birmingham and Sutton Coldfield area well, and so she will particularly understand why so many of us locally are deeply troubled by this unpleasant episode. The initial decision to ban the Israeli fans was clearly wrong, and that is now compounded by the information that has come to light, and I congratulate my honourable friend on securing this urgent question today. Madam Deputy Speaker, Birmingham is a welcoming and tolerant city, and community relations in Britain's second city are truly excellent. That is not because of the politicians, it's because of the work that the faith communities have done over many years.
My right honourable friend is right. I'm very familiar with Sutton Coldfield, and my husband is a Villa season ticket holder, as are my twin boys, and it is in some ways the bane of my life because I never see them. They're always at Villa. But anyway, and it is worth saying, you know, the Villa fans are lovely. It is a lovely club, and they are just devastated that there would be any of this controversy. They just want to play football, watch football, support their players, and get on with it. And they found the whole thing, having talked to lots of them, you know, very upsetting actually, and they just want to watch the football. Birmingham is a great city. He's absolutely right, and I should pay tribute to the faith communities in his area, but across, I suspect, a lot of our constituencies where the Faith Together groups come together and bring different leaders together to make sure we are all learning from each other and living side by side together in peace.
Paul Kohler.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. According to Jonathan Jardine, the West Midlands Police and Crime Commissioner, in his response to the Home Affairs Select Committee, the Home Office was fully briefed in advance on the likely recommendation to ban visiting fans from the match. So can the Minister explain why the government failed to offer additional support for the match to go ahead until after the ban was finalised?
We weren't fully briefed in advance of the decision. We were told when the decision was made. We knew, as we've already set out, that there were options being considered. The way that these processes work in this country is we have a SAG advisory group that comes together and makes recommendations, and the local authority then respond accordingly. We are, in response to what has happened, asking the inspector to look at those safety advisory groups and to tell us whether we need to make some changes.
Thank
you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As the Vice Chair of the APPG for Anti-Semitism, I can attest to the fact that many British Jews don't feel safe, especially in Birmingham. And I take her on her word that she takes this very, very seriously. But when I stood up and spoke about this issue, I received torrents of abuse for doing so. But I did so because I thought it was clear that this decision was wrong. It was bad for the people of the West Midlands. It was bad for Aston Villa fans. It was bad for British Muslims who wrote to me and said that they were concerned that they got dragged into it. And of course, terrible for British Jews. She talked about the evidence. She can't comment on the evidence being made up. But she read the Dutch report, and does she acknowledge that the stories over the weekend have further upset British Jews? And will she ensure that West Midlands Police are held to account for this?
Can I thank him for his comments? And he's right that there are Jews in this country who don't feel safe. We have a small community in Croydon have a synagogue very close to my house, and I certainly have spoken to them many times about how they feel, and it is true that people don't want to go into central London at the weekend, and that should be completely unacceptable to all of us, and that is why we're reviewing the public order legislation, looking at the way that we balance the right, of course, for people to express their views and to protest in a way that is appropriate, but also with the reality of the impact that has had over quite a long period of time now. I am aware of the things that he raised in terms of the information. My point is we need I've written to the West Midlands Police to ask them a series of questions, and I don't want to comment until I have those responses. And I know that the Home Affairs Select Committee have written as well.
Wendy Morton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As a West Midlands MP, I find this deeply troubling. And there are clearly questions that do need to be answered. But specifically in light of the significant inaccuracies that have now been confirmed by Dutch law enforcement, does she agree with me that there are also questions that should be asked of the political leadership in the West Midlands, in particular Police and Crime Commissioner, who, however we look at it, Madam Deputy Speaker, is supposed to be representing our communities?
Yes, quite right.
I'm not going to make the slightly political point here of her decision to attack the Police and Crime Commissioner. I think he does a good job, and he has served well for many years. I think the wider question, the wider point she makes about her concern as a West Midlands MP about what this means and what has happened, I absolutely share.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Does the Minister agree that the information that has come to light over the weekend seems to suggest that a very worrying bias has entered into the decision-making process, and that this has cast a stain on Birmingham's reputation as a welcoming city, as well as raising serious questions about the senior leadership of West Midlands Police.
I'm not going to draw that conclusion today, and I am going to make sure we get to the bottom of the reporting yesterday and what happened, and he can be assured of that. I think it does speak to a question that we often ask of police, to make decisions that are almost impossible. Setting aside this particular case, we ask police to police protests in a way where we are almost asking them to make political decisions from a day-to-day basis, which is very difficult for them. And we do have, and I should pay tribute to a lot of our very excellent public order police officers who are very well trained, work in very difficult circumstances. We ask a lot of them, and I am grateful for the work that they do.
Christine Jardine.
Much, Madam Deputy Speaker. After the incident with Maccabi Tel Aviv fans in Amsterdam, the government's independent assessor on anti-Semitism, Lord Mann, visited the city, did a fact-finding mission and compiled a report which was then passed to the government. It was passed to the government in January and to the government and police again in June. Can the Minister tell us what consideration, if any, was given to this report in the decision-making?
I would very much like to talk to Lord Mann about the work that he's done, which was prior to me being in post, but I will pick that up.
Thank
you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I mean, let's cut to the chase, Madam Deputy Speaker. Jew hatred in this country has been on the rise for over a decade now. It was given a safe space in the past, and that has grown. I have a significant Jewish population in my constituency who will tell you that going into Leeds sometimes feel a really threatening place with the protest. But the reality is that the protests which take place are okay under freedom of speech, which I support, as long as they don't break the law. These fans were not breaking the law, Madam Deputy Speaker. They should have been allowed to go. But it appears that there are people, for example, my right honourable friend has outlined on the Safety Advisory Board, who had a biased intent. So may I ask the Minister whether the government can start to really analyse and audit these boards that are supposed to be independent, because we've seen bias at the BBC, we've seen a rise in anti-Semitic language and incidents in the NHS, which despite the Health Secretary saying are unacceptable, the GMC clears. We have 51% of students in Russell Group University reported they feel it's okay to insult Jews. So can I ask the Minister, please, can there be a root and branch review from the government to make sure that bodies are truly independent and not hiding their blatant anti-Semitism?
Yeah. To his first point, I mean, the Prime Minister and everybody across government made clear, the Prime Minister's view was very clear that this was the wrong decision that was made, and we that's our position. We believe the decision made was the wrong one. On the SAGs, the Safety Advisory Committees, we have asked the Inspector to look at them and look at their role and look at their function. And of course, he's right to point out that across all our public bodies, we need to stamp out anti-Semitism in all its forms, wherever we find it and wherever we see it, and I will certainly support him in that.
Sammy Wilson.
Speaker, confidence in the police, of course, is very important, and the Jewish community have every justification for not being confident in the police, whether it's some of the policing we've seen here in London or in the West Midlands. Given that the reports in the Sunday Times seem to contradict totally what the police in the West Midlands said, is it not accurate to say that their recommendations on which Israeli fans were banned from the Aston Villa match was nothing but a tissue of lies? And if they'd really wanted accurate information, as experienced investigators, would they not have just lifted the phone or sent an email to the police in Amsterdam to find out what the facts were of the match that occurred there? It appears that they have given in to pressure from Muslim politicians and Muslim thugs, and as a result, once again, the Jewish community are left feeling that they're the disadvantaged people. Will the Minister assure us that the inquiry will look very clearly at what political pressure was put on the police in the West Midlands to reach this decision?
The honourable member is right to say that confidence in policing is incredibly important, and we need it to be we need that confidence across all our communities in the UK, and we know that there is a lot of work to do in some areas in particular. I'm not going to comment on what appears to be the case, but I can reassure him, as I've said, that the Prime Minister believes this was the wrong decision in the first place. We do want to understand what happened, and we do want a wider look at the safety advisory groups, which, as I said, were set up in response to a problem of safety within our football venues. Actually, we recognise that things have moved on. We need to look at whether they're working in the way that they should be.
Lewis.
It sounds like the Minister is getting to grips with this, and I'm very grateful for that. Will she accept that the counterpart or the corollary of operational independence for the police is their political impartiality? And does she agree with me that the last thing we want is a poisonous cocktail of football hooliganism infected by the hatreds arising out of the Middle Eastern conflict?
The Honourable Gentleman's right to talk about political impartiality. It's absolutely crucial that our police are not making decisions based on politics, but we ask them every day to almost do that, even though we're very clear they mustn't, and it is difficult and it is complicated. And when they are policing, for example, in London or our big cities, protests that have multiple causes and are in response to events around the world that are deeply interesting to a lot of citizens of this country, we do ask a lot of them, and I think we do need to appreciate that in the vast majority of cases they make the right call. They do things behind closed doors that we don't see. There's lots of negotiation, for example, with lots of protest organisations over changing the route and making sure it's operating and moving in the right way to avoid more conflict. And they do, in the main, a very good job, but we need to make sure we get to the bottom of this case.
Bradley Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Well, this whole sorry episode will have had a very corrosive effect on the confidence and trust that the Jewish community place in policing. So can the Minister tell us what the government is going to do to ensure that in the long term that confidence is restored? And whether we're talking about this instance at Villa Park or whether it's disorder following pro-Palestinian marches, can the Minister tell me in the House why she thinks it is that for far too often the Jewish community are the ones made to feel that they are the problem?
He raises a good question, and of course we need to work with the Jewish community to make sure the relationships are strong with policing. I would say that I think the Community Security Trust have a really good relationship with policing. They work very, very closely. They obviously have a huge infrastructure, for which we're very grateful, which helps them to monitor the synagogues and other spaces. And I've been, as probably many members have, to their head office and seen the work that they do. Indeed, they have a police officer embedded in their operation centre for some of the time. So those relationships are good. It's the wider Jewish community, of course, need to feel that they can go to the police, they can report crimes, and I would encourage them all to do so wherever they are affected by any kind of hate crime, so that we can make sure the figures are accurate. But of course, I'll keep working to make sure we get this right.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Now, the whole House recognises the challenge posed by football hooliganism, but anyone with the slightest knowledge of football would accept that this is restricted to a very small minority of fans of clubs and countries across the world. So can I ask the Minister to work with colleagues in the Home Office and with police forces across the country to ensure that next time an Israeli club draws a British club in European competition, or the Israeli national side draws one of the home nations in a qualifying competition, or indeed if Israel were to qualify for Euro 2028, that those fans would be welcome in the United Kingdom to enjoy our football and our hospitality?
Of course, we want to ensure all fans from all parts of the world are welcome in this country, and he's absolutely right to say that the problem of football hooliganism is nothing like what it was in the 1980s. There was a football match where fans were banned to Villa in 2023, but that was in response to activity I think that was happening in the immediate vicinity of the match, and the decision was made then. But he's right to say this is not a large problem, thank goodness, anymore, in part because of great policing and in part because of the way we've changed how football matches work, and they're much more family affairs than they used to be, less alcohol, all of these things that have helped us with these issues. But he's right, of course, we want to welcome Israeli fans whenever they come.
Final question, Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister very much for her answers and for her confidence that she's trying to instil in across the nation. Madam Deputy Speaker, following the news in relation to the so-called confidential intelligence West Midlands Police claimed to have seen that Israeli fans were engaging in quite significant levels of hooliganism, I again am very concerned, as others have expressed as well, that the message this sends in relation to exclusion and how government deal with intelligence in this country. What steps have been taken for the future to ensure that international football fans are treated fairly and not excluded from events based on incorrect information and dishonest claims, and that lessons can be learnt to prevent a similar instance in the future? Thank you very much.
Minister.
Well, the premise of his question, of course, I agree with. We want to make sure intelligence is correct where we can, and we want to make sure decisions are made on a wide range of factors, and that football, a sport that this country loves so much, can carry on in the way that we all want it to.
That is the end of the urgent question. I'll give the front benches a few moments to shuffle over.